I like the idea of starting something that has never been done before and being able to write your own rules and write your own path and lead your own way, and no one being able to tell you that you couldn't do this or you couldn't do that because no one knows. My name is Fabi Reyna. I am the founder and editor-in-chief of She Shreds magazine.
FemBeat! 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 This is FemBeat! Hey, Lauren?
So hopefully this is just the extent of it. We'll be good without it.
Yeah.
Cool. Alright, I'm gonna get this truck out of here.
Great. Okay. Not only did I not go to college, but I also did really bad in high school, and so I was never a writer. I hated deadlines. Everything that has to do with managing and editing and writing a magazine, I pretty much wasn't qualified for. So I had to learn everything along the way. I've learned how to write, I've learned how to edit, I've learned how to copy edit, I've learned how to manage, I've learned how to sell, I've learned how to fund a huge project, social media, marketing, everything. I'm really interested in looking at different countries and the women involved there that aren't necessarily talked about, and discovering parts of history that aren't in the history books, or like women who don't have Wikipedia pages but really pioneered specific genres. There's so many. We find so many. It's so insane. The leading guitar magazine is Guitar World, and that magazine, it features like half-naked women and models on their covers, like straddling guitars and sort of objectifying and sexualizing them. And as a kid, when I would read those, like I didn't think at that time, I wasn't like, oh, this is wrong, but I felt like this wasn't for me. I didn't feel represented. I didn't feel like I wanted to go home and play guitar. I felt like I wanted to go home and rethink why I'm even playing, you know? Like in advertisements and commercials and magazines, you never saw women. You never saw them, and if you did, it was in like lifestyle magazines or in like Cosmopolitan and etc. You know, and that affects everybody, that especially in mainstream culture, when you're really, really listening to what other people are telling you, and you live your life based on what other people tell you to do, what the media tells you to do, you know? So it's not their fault. They're just innocent victims of bad media. When I go to conventions and trade shows, and I go up to people and I'm like, hey, this is a magazine about women guitarists and bassists, and companies tell me like, we don't think that women actually play music and that they're consumers, because we've never seen that, or that they've never marketed towards women, or they've never considered women. That's crazy. It's 2016, and in the 40 years that companies have been around, they've never thought about how women would perceive their advertisements or their instruments. So I sort of realized there needed to be just a huge revolution in the whole industry. I think that the past 5 years has definitely shown us a lot of conversations and media attention that depicts feminism in multiple ways, and I think that's awesome. And for me, like, I struggled with feminism too, because I didn't want to, it felt really exclusive to me, and I didn't want people to be scared of coming to She Shreds because they didn't want to associate with exclusion, really. But I learned how to integrate that into something positive, into being an example of like intersectional feminism, which is something I just learned about, intersectional feminism, which I've really been practicing for all my life. But that's loud. There's different ways of perceiving feminism, and I think having conversations is good. And I think that's why people are more like, feel more comfortable coming into the conversation with us, because we're not necessarily here to judge people or tell people that they're wrong. And if they are wrong, we're going to show them why. And have a conversation about it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the only time I ever get any negative responses is when it stretches out into like the mainstream world, and when like companies like, I don't know, big companies talk about us to their like very mainstream population, and they're like, what is this? Or they're like, maybe it should be called They Shred, or like, what if we started something called He Shreds? Like, you know, and really it's just kind of like, well, why don't you just like look into the history of everything and, you know, let me know how many women you find. And then you tell me like we don't need She Shreds or like things like it. Ultimately, I want inclusivity. Ultimately, I want equality. And how does you know, creating something that only talks about women do that? But the reality is that if we didn't exist, then these spaces wouldn't nurture like women's voices, you know, and we would just have to keep fighting against like the culture of male dominance, and that's really difficult to do when you feel like you're alone.
Hi, my name is Marta, and I am Fabi's mom. And Fabi is the mother. Have you seen her Facebook where it says, She Shreds mom, so I'm She Shreds grandma. I was raised between two boys, so I got to be really tomboyish. But at the same time, I was really, it was a chauvinistic society, you know, the Mexican culture. And so as soon as I could, I had to prove myself that I could do whatever they were doing, and I did it better. With Fabi, I knew that, yeah, I didn't want to raise her to be discriminated against. And if she was, that she was going to push through that and fight against that, yeah. Because I went through it, yeah, definitely. I wanted her to survive through anything, yeah. Hold on. Did she cry? Okay. Yeah, I didn't want her to be afraid of anything, yeah. Yeah, so I didn't just encourage her, I pushed her hard, yeah. Like, especially, there are things that she's real natural at. So yeah, the things that she wasn't natural at, I pushed.
I mean, really, you know, my mom, she decided to put me in music camp where I learned guitar, and she drove me from Austin to Portland to the Girls Rock camp. And I feel like that's such a huge feat. Like, a lot of parents wouldn't necessarily do that for their kids. She's always encouraged me to try things, even if I can't do them or don't want to do them. She even sometimes made me try them. And that's how I lived my whole life, yeah. Yeah, it's cool to see how my mom has influenced my whole life. Yeah. So anyway, cool. There's been a lot of instances where conversations have come up and have changed, and this year has sort of seen the biggest change, where companies are actively coming to us and they're actively saying, like, we don't want to advertise like this anymore. Like, we want to really consider your demographic, and we, you know, yeah, it's important. Like, we get it. Like, women play, and that's only really two or three, maybe 5 years old. Yeah. I guess to add to that, it's like, well, this is just the beginning, you know. And I can only hope that it's not just a marketing scheme, that it's not just going to last 5 years, that hopefully it sticks, and that we as a magazine and as a media company can continue to encourage and demonstrate that these women exist and that women play and that they're just like any other musician, and hopefully that continues and just becomes normal. Yeah.